everybody, this is Alex Merced and welcome to another video on data modeling. If you've been enjoying this series so far, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And today what I want to talk about is a topic called slowly changing dimensions. So what's the idea here? The idea behind slowly changing dimensions, I should probably put that over here. Okay, SCD, slowly changing dimensions. And the idea here is, how do we handle data that changes over time? Okay, and we'll keep this really simple. So we're going to say, hey, we have start off with just a normal customer table. So customer. Okay, and then each customer is going to have an ID. Okay, each customer is going to have a name, and each customer is going to have an address. Okay, and we'll kind of go through this a few different times. Okay, so here we have one Alex some street. Okay, so there are different types of SCD, and SCD is not how you model the whole table. It's sort of how you approach the changes of a particular field. So in this case, ID, okay, that's going to generally be something like SCD type 0. It just means it never changes. Like the ID of the customer generally should not change. There's only one copy of that customer. There's a unique identifier for that specific customer. Okay, name. For now, we'll just say that's also SCD type 0, but we could also say that's SCD type 1, which means it changes, but when it changes, we just replace the value. So we don't keep any we don't track what it used to be at all. Okay, so in that case, we would just update it, and let's say one day I just change it to Alexander, it would just replace the old value. So 0 never changes. SCD type 1 means you change it, but you just replace the old value. Now, once we get beyond that, okay, let's say address. Well, let's say address, that can change, and it probably does matter that you track the old address for a variety of different reasons. Imagine we're talking about like records for a financial company. Well, there are tax implications of where you live. What is your place of residency at the time of a transaction? So in that case, being able to track the place you live during certain transactions could be really important. Although there, we probably are going to want to do some of these. Actually, SCD2 would be able to handle this. So let's talk about SCD2. So SCD2, what basically you would do is you would basically add a column, like you would add additional columns to be able to track the changes in addresses or the changes in the customer. So in this case, we might say something like created at. Okay, and then maybe like, let's say ending at. Okay, so let's say this was my original address. We'll say like this was from, 06/30, my birthday, 1985, to December 1st, 2023. So then what would happen is it'd be another record for Alexander, basically living now in another street. Okay, in this case, like this approach could actually capture changes across multiple fields. So that's one reason why you might like this approach. Okay, because it's just a whole copy of the record in the values as of that point. So you're never really changing the old record. So essentially, technically, this would have never changed. So essentially, this would still be, okay, Alex. Okay, and basically what would happen is I would make the changes to the record, and then this would reflect the new changes. And it would say basically this is now effective as of 12/01/2023, and then you would set this to some really far off date. So you would say 12/31 9,999. Okay, because then what would happen is that I would basically then do a search for any record that equals my ID, that equals whose ending at field is either greater or equal than today. Okay, and there should only be one that matches that. Okay, so that would be, or ending at is greater than today. There should only be really one record that does that, and that's the current record. And now I can find the current version, but in that case, now in the future, if I want to, I can say, hey, find me a version of Alex that is between, that is created at after this day equal then and after this day, but before or after this day. And ending at value before at this day, they get that specific version of Alex. Now the catch is you end up with you're storing all those additional rows. So you're adding a bunch of rows, and let's say I only change one thing, you're duplicating those values. So, you know, but you'll capture all those changes, and you're going to have one big table. Okay, so that's called SCD2. Okay, so SCD2. So again, let's just recap. SCD0, nothing changes. Okay, SCD1, we just replace the value, no history. Okay, let me just rewrite this. It's going to bug me. SCD0. Okay, SCD2. Okay, what happens is we have, version to rows. So basically, you have different rows that capture different versions of the record. Cool. Now in SCD3, we just have a previous value column. Okay, so in this case, what would happen is that there would only be one version of Alex. Okay. Actually, let me keep all that. Let me just do this. Control C. Okay. In this situation, what you do is you probably put like a current address and a previous address field. Okay, as your two extra fields. And then, well, we'd get rid of this. So let me just actually do this. Cut. Okay. And basically, let's say I decide to change my address. So first, when I first sign up, it would be like that. But then if I decide to change my address, we'd say, okay, well, this becomes some street. And this becomes another street. So you're not capturing like every address I've ever had, but you are capturing at least the previous address. Okay, which, possibly could be important for, records if you're trying to figure out where to return stuff to sender or whatnot, but you don't want to necessarily keep a bunch of rows like here to capture every change, but you want to have some level of history that you can use for some use cases. So again, it just depends on like sort of what your use cases are. If you're not gonna, if it's not really important that hey, where did your customer live 10 years ago, and every place they've lived in between, then this may be sufficient. And again, in this case, you're not saving the additional rows, so you're not running into that additional storage cost. So this is why it's always important to kind of know sort of what is the application of your data and understanding sort of like, hey, what am I going to do with this data so I can choose, not always just choose sort of the most robust solution, because a very flexible solution also comes with costs. Okay, again, storage, complexity, things like that. Okay, so again, that was the previous current fields. Okay, then there's going to be SCD4, where we just have a separate history table. Okay, so this is going to be similar to what we did here, except the difference is that the older versions get saved into a separate table. Okay, and that other table could be either like a tracking specific changes. Okay, you're just tracking, hey, when did things change? It could just be, again, holding on to these rows. So again, you would have the customer table. So in this case, we'd have to start off with. And then we have like a separate specific record for address changes. Okay, address changes would be the table. Okay. And then what you would do is say something like, hey, so we'd have the ID. So will there be the ID of the record? Then it'd be like the customer ID, because we have to know which customer's address is changing. And then we would have like a field maybe like new address, previous address, created at. Okay, and so basically with this, I can look up a customer and look up all their address changes, and then I can like put them in ascending order to kind of see when they were effective and kind of go from there. Okay, but the idea is that now my customer table only has one record per customer. Okay, so my customer table is much easier to work with And then basically, if I need to go track down the changes to that field, I can go use this history table. That history table could also just be, basically just have historical changes to the whole row. That history table could be of several different designs. So it just depends on sort of, I think if you like track it like this, where you just have the historical versions of the row, I think that starts becoming known as the revision pattern. But that's the basic idea. So basic here, we're using a separate table that tracks the changes, and the actual table of customers doesn't handle the changes, doesn't have the previous and current fields, doesn't have the version rows, doesn't have that. Okay, now ironically, there is no SCD5. Okay. Basically, what's going to happen is if you read different books, you'll find different definitions for what this fifth SCD type is. What is well established is what is SCD type 6. Okay, and then this is basically a mix of 2 and 3. Okay, so essentially you would have the version rows. Okay, so you essentially have what you have here. Okay, with basically the customer table. Okay, but the difference is we would also then also have the current. Let's do this. Insert one column to the right. Actually, that was not what I wanted to do. Let me just do it this way. Control X. Move that there. And then this would become Control C. And you would end up with this way. So this would become another street. Well, actually, this would be none. And then this would be some street. Okay, so in that case, basically what happens is that if I just need to know what the previous address is, like if I just need to know that real quick, I have that in the current record. So that's going to save me time if that's all I need, the previous address. But in a situation where I need to go find the historical addresses, I can piece that together, and then I can, and again, seeing that the previous value, so if I'm seeing that the current value is the previous value of another record, is just one way to validate that I have these in the right order. Because basically I should see like some street, and then if we were to go here and I don't change it again, okay, Alex, one street, another street, okay, that, again, gives me sort of a lever for validation. I can go, because I can see, okay, I should always see what's in this record should be over here for the previous one. If I have these all ordered correctly, all the way up to sort of the first record, we should have none as the previous address or some other sort of placeholder value. Okay, so that is sort of SCD type 6, where it's more of a hybrid solution. You're taking advantage of multiple approaches here. Okay, so again, SCD6 is the hybrid. SCD5 just doesn't have a solid definition, so you'll find different people say different things if you look it up. But that's what SCD is. It's just different approaches to say, how do I track changes to my data? Okay, and again, it depends on sort of, there's no right answer. It's based on what your needs are. The question is, do I need every version of my data? Do I prefer to have it all in the same table? Do I prefer to have it in a separate table if I do? Okay, do I only need the previous address? Do I need any history at all? Okay, is this value ever going to change? These are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself when you're modeling your data to make sure you have a schema that's going to offer you the proper flexibility to capture the data you need so you can use it the way that you plan on using it. Okay, and give you the granularity you need to do whatever. Okay. So with that, my name is Alex Merced. If you guys have enjoyed the video, make sure you hit like, subscribe, leave a comment, follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'll see y'all later.